Welcome to Journeys into Enlightenment with Janet. Join Janet and her friends as they gather at the intersection of consciousness and self-experience, what being consciousness in human form is all about. Access heart-centered awareness with them and feel the difference in the moment that will last a lifetime.
Hello, and welcome to Journeys into Enlightenment with Janet. I'm your guide, Janet Barrett. Thank you for joining me here at the intersections of consciousness and self. In this reality state, I offer this podcast in. Time and space are malleable. We allow our senses of self to relax and to breathe in and connect to our center of wonder and being. We can feel it in the quiet and calm and sacred that incorporates at the same time an active, vital sense of potential and energy open to transformation and transcendence in the moments we will share. If this is a new feeling for you, great. It will come into focus for you each time and build resonance with each episode. Just allow. You will get what you get and a whole lot more. Our topic today is a continuance of our conversation about Ubuntu, the African appreciation of oneness, with my friend Dr. Mmatheo Motsisi. Today we use Ubuntu to heal our separated or fragmented self. We are compromised when we deal with life only as self, in failing to recognize the bigger picture, that is the truth of our orientation, which is all as one. Our fragmented self operates out of a state of separateness. The separated self maintains the illusion of others, including Mother Earth, as different, indifferent, threatening, or something to be conquered. This illusion is harmful as we witness our developing effects upon this planet and with each other. It is not our authentic voice. For Mmatheo and our indigenous brethren, they think and live in terms of the human community first, not the individual, as we might do in Western cultures. Community, communal organization, where its members are integrated in and contribute to the whole, is the basis of living in physical form. This model has each child being raised by the village members, not only parents. Each child has merit, and it is inconceivable that one would not. How about we expand into each other easily then? Let's start with something simple, like breathing. Air is universal, goes everywhere. It is essential to life, all life. It is easy to do most of the time as we do it unconsciously. We just need to shift focus a bit. The following I have mentioned as my blog, Breathing Through Our Shared Heart, in the last episode. You can see the complete form there. So, sit, picture a Mobius strip, and let your heart be the center of the crossover. As you notice your next breath in, let yourself feel how you are moving your breath into your heart. Feel your breath go into your heart, through your heart, and circle around behind you, and then come back through your heart, moving outward. Let yourself feel the movement as it comes in and goes out the back of your heart and circles around and goes back into your heart and going forward and outward, circling around and comes back in. Let this continue. And while doing this, bring the awareness that you are softening and dissolving your outside form and becoming only an energy state at the same time. Feel the rhythm and the gush. Feel it expand and include others. Mmatheo reminds us that there is nothing to learn, only remember. Memories live in many states of awareness. We follow time as sequential when it is, and as just moments of awareness when it isn't. The same for space. We provide the connection which can seem orderly, or where it lives as shifting sands. What we call past, present, and future are active in many different ways concurrently. Neither lives in terms of right nor wrong. Logic is set, or fuzzy, or questionable. History is helpful. It tells us where we have been. Written history can be as interpretive as oral history and as creative. It all comes down to the mindsets of the authors and our own biases. My friend, Dr. Mmatheo Motsisi, is an indigenous knowledge systems practitioner. She was initiated as a shaman, Sangoma, diviner, and holds several degrees of healing, among them in traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture. Her book, Odyssey of a Healer, is her 10-year personal spiritual pilgrimage and the experiences of other healers she interacted with during her many travels, working with indigenous peoples in Nepal, India, China, USA, and motherland Africa. It was a journey exploring the healing power of nature. Her quest has been to unravel the mystery that underlies the foundations anchoring our state of oneness, beyond the created and perceived divisions in existence. She is regarded as a vessel to liberally share her spiritual insight with others in their pursuit to unravel the mystery about Mother Nature as the giver of life, the nurturer, the healer. She is comfortable with ritual and the lyrical languages and realms of the heavens, star seeds, blessed ones, the ancients and elders of traditions, as she is with modern men and women and the wisdom of the scientist. She travels and straddles the realms of spirit, Lemuria, Atlantis, and is a carrier of the history and time of all people. She embodies our African mother that lives in each of us. She runs her holistic practice located in Orange Grove, Johannesburg, South Africa. At our website for this episode, you can find the correct spelling for her website address, www.mmatheomotsisi.com, and her email at matteo@worldonline.co.za. Hello, Mmatheo. How are you, sweetie?
I'm well, and I hope you well also after our communion yesterday.
Yeah, we had a lot going on. So everyone, we want to thank Mmatheo for joining us, and just take a moment, because today's follow-up to Ubuntu, which is about oneness and the African approach of life, and we were talking about how we each have the African mother within us, and so that our conversation was going to resonate on very deep levels for all of us in bringing us into community and realizing that we are maybe individuals, but each of ourselves in the collective is unity and oneness. And so today's conversation, we're going to talk about the separated self and how to bring that part of us that feels distinct and alone and separate, etc., which is probably causing a lot of issues in the world, how to bring that back into the fold, literally, and within ourselves, feel the unity, the marrying, the merging of what feels separate back into the truth as essence and spirit. So let's see here. Let's start with, okay, so Mmatheo, you had written to me this description, and I want to put this out here for all of us to be part of. The human being is inconceivable outside the context of relations with other human beings. The isolated individual is not the starting point. It is the individual integrated within the human community, local and universal, which is the starting point in the understanding of the particular individual and the establishment of relations with that individual. So everybody, this is where we start. And so just notice right in this moment about being present with us. And we're taking the separated senses of self and merging them into this collective sense of being. And Mmatheo will take us deep, deep, deep into earth. And I'll throw a little thrill of all the heavens. And we're going to just meet here. And over the course of our conversation, you're going to be noticing different things. And I have a feeling that a lot of it is just, it's like the antenna will go up. And you'll just start to, maybe not, so much of this is not articulated. And Mmatheo and I talk about that, which is funny. It's just about your sensors opening up to new information. And it's really old information that you're holding inside, but it has a sense that it's been asleep. So this is us waking up. And so this is affecting you individually, your neighbor, your family, your community, and this planet. And that's where this deep resonance is showing up in the relation to Earth, or Mother Earth, and in the cosmos. There we go. What you noticing, Mmatheo? Right in this moment.
We are part of all that it is.
Mm-hmm.
We are part of all that it is. We are part of the community, part of Mother Earth, part of the universe, part of the cosmos. We are inseparable from all that it is.
Yeah. So let's just be here for a moment, everyone. Yeah, there we go. So what we're going to notice is that opening. Just think of a flower that opens. Think of a baby opening its eyes. Think of information just coming into awareness. Oh, that feels really nice. So notice as you look around in this moment, internally or externally with your human eye, what comes into awareness? If you look at something that's a part of nature, and I just mean in the sense that it's organic and living, like the flower or the tree around you or the bird, just notice you're relating to it now as you might have before we began this podcast. And I think what I feel, Mmatheo, is it almost has a sense of solidness, but I think it's connection. You know how we express, we can feel and then we try to interpret it, but it just feels really strong.
It's an energy. It's energy, and it's difficult to actually describe it in words. But
right.
You feel you are within that field, and when you are within that field, everything resonates with you. It's just expansion. I don't have words to describe it, but it's energy flowing.
I'm thinking of you there in South Africa. I'm here in Portland, Oregon. Boyd, our wonderful sound engineer, is in Kansas. And it's like we're all right here, right? There's no space, there's no time, because you're in a different time zone. You're 9 hours ahead of me, and he's 2 hours ahead of me. And all that is not present in my awareness about just being. There is no separateness here.
Because the energy be flowing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So listeners, wherever you might be, you're part of this also. So what we offer you is just notice what it feels like to feel this connection. And that's the morphic field resonance, which is the shared genetic material that we have. It's the entanglement, where we can track each other because information is free. So, Mmatheo, we wanted to start with what the idea of self is, and you were going to explain that so that we can get a sense of where we are. So, go for it, girl. Tell us what self is.
Okay, on our first episode, I spoke about Ubuntu, people of Earth, and the concept of self based on ancient knowledge that's been derived from the Bantu, which Bantu got it from the ancient ones, was that self, it's the individuated self as perceived separate from others and the great spirit. And self builds up gradually, slowly, of the memories, the thoughts, and experiences. And we call that self the acquired self. And it's not tangible. It's not actually flesh and blood, but it's an apparition of this transparent mist or the shadow or the ghost. To actually maybe give a better understanding, a ghost or an apparition, we tend to observe it or experience it, or experience it, or maybe observe or see it if your third eye is quite open. After a person has departed to the spiritual realm, that ghost or apparition lives on for some time after the body has actually been buried. Mm-hmm. And that it's not that apparition. It's actually not immortal, and it should not be confused with the soul. Mm. Back home here, we call that self the inner, which means basically the acquired self. So I'll stick to the English language. I'll say the acquired self. And that acquired self, it gradually develops from memories, thoughts, and experiences. When a baby is born, when we all born, or when we all arrive here, we are born with the body, the ball of instruction I spoke about. That's the ball of instruction, the body, the mind, and the soul. But we don't have the acquired self. The acquired self, like a flower, Jeanette spoke earlier about a flower opening. It's that flower that opens up as a child grows, and then with the experiences derived from the environment, from people around, from whoever raised the child, and the child tends to imitate, especially parent. And that shapes the acquired self. So the acquired self, we can say it contributes to the character of a person because it's built. The acquired self and the soul contribute to the character of a person. So that should not be confused with the immortal soul. It's an apparition. After a person transforms into the other realms, we have that which hooves around for some time, and then eventually it's no longer around. It varies. Some they hoover around a bit longer, some it's a short period. I've had an opportunity to actually experience that with few of those that I'm close to. So that's the understanding from knowledge of the ancient ones about the concept of self or the acquired self. So I wouldn't want to go deeper into it. I think that suffices to actually give a brief understanding.
Okay. All right, so everybody just be noticing. You can feel it's almost like that flower opening up and what's in the center of the flower as it shows itself to the world and in the sun. And then we have all these different layers. We have all these different fields of awareness that we hold, and it's how it all comes together in each of us. And do you think so when we talk to human community in Ubuntu, we have this self and we have it in different stages, and at some point when it's open, does that where it realizes its essence and soul and that it's part of a community where there's some place in awareness that happens where this all organizes and merges together?
Okay, when I said when a child is born in our community, we experience more of a nucleus family in the West. In Africa, even in ancient time, nucleus family is actually non-existent. A child belongs to the community, a child belongs to the society, a child belongs to the universe. A child doesn't belong to the mother and the father, the small nucleus family that it's emphasized in the West. A child is not only raised by the parents, a child is raised by the community. By the society, by the leaders.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So a child, every elder or elderly person is a mother and a father to the child, not only the biological parents. So family, when a child is raised, that's how I was raised. When there's challenges in raising a child, you'll find that it's not only the mother and the father who will actually try and resolve the challenges of the problem. It will involve the grandparents. It will, if the grandparents cannot actually be able to help, it will extend to the community. It's actually a communal thing. So we lose that. I think also I lost that when I was raising my own children with adopting a nucleus type of raising children. And I got stuck along the way because the nucleus concept, which is a Western concept of nucleus family, it's very difficult. And it has been proved to me that it doesn't work. It didn't work for me because it's very limited. Everything revolves around you. But when it's a community, you've got those who can actually offer advice, guidance, who've been around, the elders, the grandparents, who've actually some of the stages that as a young parent, you're still going through the teething phase of actually raising children. So in our community, everything, it's not a small isolated thing that you deal with. Everything it's integrated within the community, and then it expands outside.
So what you're describing, you're describing the fragmented or the fragmentation, the fracturedness that can happen in families that we're seeing a lot in the world, and certainly in Western cultures, and families that don't stay together. You lose that community support, and we're looking to make something happen that is natural to be there, right, where the community stepped in, and you weren't required to know it all. And because we know how young parents do, if you don't have any experience with babies and children, you don't have all the answers. And so you had the older community there that said, oh, okay, here, you can breathe this. Well, let's try this approach. There's some history, and why history helps us, because then we can get into patterns and stuff. So you're describing that it can happen in all kinds of cultures, where that community support gets fractured in some way, and then one is left, and you're developing the sense of the separated self, that you have to do it all, and that becomes the day-to-day that you become involved in. Yeah.
And also it's the setup of our system. I mean, things have changed. We have advanced in many ways, but the more we become advanced and the more we regard ourselves as more civilized, the more we become detached to the actual root of what makes us who we are as humans and what makes that spirit of Ubuntu and oneness in us. Nuclear family, like the fragmented family that we're talking about, as parents, the lifestyle now forces parents to go and work. Then they have somebody taking care of the children. Back home, we have people who used to stay in rural areas having to go to the city to look for jobs. So also we have a fragmented family. So it's when we look at everything in place at the moment, it's actually not encouraging that which the core of what defines us as Bantu or people of earth, where what should be resonating with each one within us is the spirit of Ubuntu. We actually, within us, we are fragmented because we have to go and search for things outside ourselves to make it happen. So everything is, don't go within. We don't look for answers within. We are not empowered from within. We go for external. And that also strips us of our state of oneness. Because state of oneness is not something external. It's something that is in us. It's within us. So when you lose that, you lose the connection with Mother Earth. You lose the connection with everything around, everything that makes who you are. Because when you lose that state of Ubuntu or oneness, what automatically kicks in? It's separate consciousness or person's consciousness, where now the person's perception of who they are is their state of awareness of the world and everything around them. They actually take themselves out of the equation, and now they see themselves as this a pillar standing alone, and everything around it's something that needs to be grabbed. There's nothing to grab out there. You don't have to grab, you have to embrace it because it's all within you. You project it and you embrace it. You don't have to grab anything.
So what comes to mind is, as the outside imprints us into being in this physical environment. And in that nourishment that we get from outside beyond us, nourishes the development of the awareness of the inside. Because it's the grandmother's face, it's the mother's love that's saying you are worthy and vital and important. And then that helps develop that self-awareness, the self-integrity, the self-identity that says, oh, here's me in my connection. And you can feel how the outside's important. Then what happens is at some point, if that outside environment is conditionalizing, because it's imprinting the child, no matter what, the baby. So whether it's good, bad, ugly, or indifferent, is going to help develop that sense of self within. And its ability to connect to something bigger than itself, and that is within that essence and soul. And so you can see how both have the relating, how information is crossing boundaries here. And so what happens when something is conditionalized, because that's what's going to happen, and what kind of conditions that it's set up, and then what the outcome, how we interpret that, how we feel that, how we bring together our awareness of essence as we get older, and what we do with that. It sets up what we choose to experience in being in life. So what you've described is really this relation of how information comes in, how it goes out, how it gets experienced. And this is all real. This is felt. This is experienced, right? And each of us listening and participating right now have some relationship to how they took in information originally and how they're experiencing themselves as themselves right now from those places. So everybody, just notice she's done a wonderful job of opening how we exchange. And just think of yourself as that baby. And for some of you, that's a, oh, okay, I can go there kind of place. And for some of you, you might be noticing some resistance, or you might be just noticing that there's an edginess. And all is okay. Because this is about opening us up to what perhaps is keeping us from enjoying ourselves here. And we don't, all of us have experienced the idolized or the concept. Here we're going to have the Donna Reed show from my past, Mmatheo, which was an idealized family on television in the 50s and 60s, and everybody wanted the Donna Reed family. She was a lovely mother, and all this kind of stuff. And so we have these icons of and images of what perfect family life was like, and we measure ourselves against them. And so let's stop that right now, because that's one thing that keeps perpetrating the separate sense of separateness. So everybody, no, we didn't all have Donna Reed families. We had the family we had. Now, what do we want to do with that? So just notice Mother Earth is just present. And just allow the softness, the nourishment of essence, of spirit, that appreciates your adventure in being. We're all having our journeys of enlightenment here. And we know, Mmatheo and I know the power that can happen, the shift that can happen when one has self-appreciation. And in any oneness and wholeness of being, there's the rough stuff, and there was the easy stuff, and there was everything in between. Of the dust. There we go. So all the things that you might have thought kept you separate in some way. And just put them over there. And by the time we get done, we'll notice if the pile's a little smaller. Okay, what you got, Mmatheo?
Okay, I'll just carry on expanding on the separate self, because I feel it's quite important, because it's like an onion peel. So let's gently deal with this separate self. I've experienced that. I know the pain thereof. And as a parent also, or being raised as a child in a fragmented family, I've experienced that. I've raised my own children. So I'm not talking theory, I'm talking from the heart, I'm talking from experience. The perception of the separate self, or like I said, it's separate consciousness. It creates or breeds limitation and a narrow-mindedness, because it dissects the whole, because we part of the whole, we are part of all that it is. And when we dissect it into fragments, we malfunction, because a fragment cannot actually function at its optimum performance, because it's a fragment.
Yeah.
So when you look around, I've experienced that. When you are a fragment, you just depend. You are incomplete, but you want to perform at your maximum, and you can't, because there are some parts that complete this fragment that are missing, and you can't. And when you can't, you reach out like your tentacles. You reach out because you want to try and grab that which you think it can complete you. And the more you reach out, the more it eludes you because it's not out there, it's within you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it creates it creates some form of selfishness because it breeds anger. The fact that you're trying to reach out for something, the more you run,
right.
chasing the wind, you're chasing the wind, and the more it eludes you. And you're not even aware that it eludes you. You actually think, if I can grab it, I will be complete.
Mm-hmm.
I'll make an example with relationships. You love. We are beings of light. We are an embodiment of love, and we are an incarnation of truth. That is within us. That's in our matrix. That's imprinted in us.
Mm-hmm.
But once you think you have to reach out for love out there, you're missing the point, because what you're saying is that you're empty. There's a void in you, and you want to fill the void by reaching for love from projecting. You see another individual and you think that individual can complete you.
Mm-hmm.
That's creating a big challenge for yourself, because you can only draw that which is in you. You don't even draw it. You sort of like sink in. That which you're looking for, it's already in you. So it's just going to radiate out. And there's no need to actually try and chase. So that's that. Then, so separate consciousness creates all that selfishness. It creates all the problems. It creates all the suffering and the distraction. And sometimes that's when we start playing the blaming game. You blame others for what you're experiencing, not actually looking within. If we were to step back and go within and realize what's the root cause of all this, the root cause is because you've lost that state of oneness, that Ubuntu. You're operating under the illusion of separate self, or separate consciousness. You're no longer in sync with the universal consciousness, and now you've lost the rhythm. But it takes time, it takes experience. I've experienced most of those, and it takes experience. By the time you awaken, and then you realize that there's nobody out there to blame. I was creating this myself because I had actually entertained the thought of being separate, the fragmented self, And when you finally step back and you say, but I'm whole, I'm complete, I'm one with all that it is, the search is over, because it's all within you, and you have peace with whatever happens, which you think is happening around you.
Okay, so Mmatheo, what comes to mind with your bringing us into the awareness of how we can create need. We get needy because we're looking. We can feel that something's not as complete as we would like, and so we're looking outside for something to feel the need. And in a consumer society, the outside stuff steps in, right? And we think if we get that, we'll start to feel better. And of course, we know the fallacy. There's only so many pairs of shoes that you can buy. And at a certain point, the closet's full, but you're just happy when you're with the shoes. So in why this is all important in the sense of the world, for instance, and Mother Earth and the cosmos, and how each of us in our neediness are setting up strains that we are not paying attention to. And I suggest that because in my neediness, sets up this consumer, something outside of me, I'm not paying attention to. I just know I go to the store and I get the food, or I don't notice what it took to produce the food. I don't know how stressed the systems are to produce that food to get to you so that I can go get it. But I can see where the progression, like dominoes. I want something to eat because I'll feel better. And what has to take place in order for it to be in the marketplace for me? And that's where the strength, that's why people don't connect to global warming. They don't connect to earth distress because they're business people and their whole focus is getting something to the marketplace.
Yes.
And maybe this is some of how when I get a piece of mail or I get an email or something and it says, you know, elephants are dying someplace and I want to send my dollars, I'm not seeing that I have to keep the animals in a separate area in order for the farmers to have their fields in order to get something to market for me. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
we're so removed because we're in that fragmented state and we're in our need. And so what we want to all be paying attention to is the truth that how the world is showing us how we're feeling, how we're taking advantage of unlimited. Now, you're in a country that has restrictions aplenty, whether it's electrical or probably how to get, you know, a marketplace that's always vibrant and healthy, with supply and demand and all those things. I have the convenience. I don't even have to go to the store. I can push a button on my computer and something shows up in a couple of days. I am so removed from what created that. You know, that thing that comes into my house that makes me feel better, maybe, or for just a little bit. And what we're offering people here is awareness of, does the thing bring you what you think it will bring? And if you just go back to recognizing essence and soul and spirit and what is nurtured inside in an unaware place, because it's all right there. You don't have to go out to get anything. And I think the loneliness that people, you know, are feeling with all the websites and the you know, all the connections that people are looking for out of a machine. You will never connect with a machine, you know, with your cell device, your computer device, whatever. It is not going to touch you in the same way that everyone wants to be touched, unless you do it from an energetic place like we do. So everybody just notice. That was a very important chunk of supply and demand. And what is it you want in your life? And where is it in you? And I'm going to guarantee you that it is in you, and it's just in an unawakened space if you're not happy with where you have and what you have now. Yeah, that's got a lot of shift there. Okay, sweetie, what else you got for us?
When we started, you mentioned something very close to my heart, and which I sent you, that the community is the bedrock of everything. Yeah. And here in Africa, before I live in a city, I live in Johannesburg. But my parents live in a rural area. And most rural areas, I think we've lost that. But it's sad that we've lost that because in rural areas, long time, the land was not owned by an individual. It was owned by the community, and they'll have farms. And the families of that community will actually work together, assign duties and work together, cultivate a farm, and whatever comes out of that farm will be shared by the community. And if there's a less fortunate family that maybe long back then, some probably have cattle and goats, and then we have those, because you'll find those who are a bit less fortunate, who might not be having enough. A family that will be having more cows or cattle will actually loan the other family a cattle so that they can also have milk. And then that cattle, maybe also when finally it has a calf, it will produce. And then whatever it gives birth to, it will be inherited by that family. And the one that's been loaned, it will be returned to that other family. So there was no way. We didn't see people on the streets begging for food like we do now. I mean, I drive around and I see that. The community was taking care of each other. Nobody was depending on the other. It was a contribution. It was a contribution where we work together, we make it happen, and we uplift. Together we rise. And if we have to fall, we fall together. It was that concept of unity. We rise together and we fall together. There was no this spirit of competition, which is actually propagated. I mean, labor in the workplace, to rise, you must step on somebody's toe and compete.
Right.
And that concept of competition, it's alien, and I find it very difficult to and then fine. Kids will go to school, but it was understood that we are a community. We build each other. We work together.
Yeah,
and we share labor. You do not succeed at the expense of somebody else. That was what was emphasized, but that has been lost, and it has been lost. May I say this? What's in my heart? I think it was done deliberately, because what was introduced, the shift in labor, where people will work together and build and rise together. When the spirit of competition was introduced in the system, in the society, people knew that somebody has to be stepped at the back for them to rise. And that creates another fragmentation. So I feel for humans. I'm a human, and I feel for ourselves the challenges that we go through. Because when you look at everything in the world, the way we're operating, the way the system is operating, it's not friendly to our own development, where it nurtures and it reinforces and it waters this seed of oneness, this seed of Ubuntu in us, so that it can germinate and grow and blossom and bear fruits. It actually put poison. It's like when you've got a garden and then you put manure, whatever thing you put in your garden, like this food that we eat now. You put wrong product, you put wrong things, so that mass production, the more you have, the bigger they are, the more you can actually sell to the community. I take us as humans to be in this garden where we are being acted upon and fed upon, unless you have a very discerning spirit to realize that you choose not to be fed, that which is poisoning and affecting the crux of who you are, of oneness, of Ubuntu.
Okay, so we've got, and I totally agree with I love the spirit of competition. we see that on television all the time here, in any kind of sporting thing. And how anything can go too far. And if you're not paying attention, then that's what happens. The spirit of competition, the need to accomplish, the need to succeed, all these outside propulsions, motivations, that your worthiness comes in what you've accomplished, not in just being. And it's the dynamic of how we've shifted from beings to doers, and it's what you do, and we're trying to go back to being and realize that it needs to come from an inside place. And you can see how civilizations have organized themselves through history. There used to be community and everybody had a say, and then one guy got stronger or something and became the ruler, and we went from council to the, and in doing that, it shifted, created hierarchy, and it started to put different values on the individuals in the community. And so we lost our sense of oneness, that we were all equal and we're all in this together. And you can see how in different traditions, like the United States is very much organized, principles are you come here to be independent, self-reliant, nobody tells you what to do. This is your piece of property, because back in the homeland or wherever that was, you couldn't own the property, or, you were working for someone else. And you can see where all these different dynamics where we are today, right? We're all coming out of these energies. And so what we're looking to do is say, okay, that's that. Now, what can we do? That's just the stories and the realities that we've manifested. So you and I are inviting people to go back to being within, and that you do in the world what you want, what makes you feel good, as opposed to what you think you have to feel good about.
Let's journey back. Let's reverse back. Let's go back. Let's allow our being. Let's remember who we are, our true essence.
Right.
And in doing so, I will just may I actually share something, some of the insight, significant highlights on the children of the law of one, from the book of the Lost Teachings of Atlantis. Okay.
Oh, all right.
Yes. So maybe because during the era of Lemura, all this which is happening now was non-existent. And then during the era of Atlantis, for some time there was that peace, and then things got out of hand, and then that's when now we sort of like started having what we're having now. Now it has actually progressed further. And it's a big concern, because if we carry on like this, we're going to destroy ourselves. Actually on the verge of destroying ourselves. And if most people who have their third eye open and who are able to tap into other realms and who are able to see what some of us are able to see, if we could see where we're heading, I think we'll all pause and take stock of what's happening in the world. But most people are focused. They are actually fast asleep. They haven't even awakened. They are not aware where we're heading. So this is a great concern. Let's go back. Let's go back, because I believe most of us, we lived during the era of Lemura and the era of Atlantis. Let's go back. Let's find ourselves as the children of the law of one. The spiritual self came to be as the one divided within itself. Created then were infinite, multiplicities of the one, still one with the one. Consciousness of oneness remained. Separate self-consciousness came to be. As the separate self moved deeper into the matter of the earth, as we became one, or we became denser and moved into the matter of earth. Vibration fell into density and fragmentation. with polarization into male and female. That's when the split took place. Remember, originally we're androgynous beings.
Right.
And I value that. I value being androgynous than being a split. I don't like it, but for now, I'll do with what I have. The opposites repelled. The positive lost receptivity. The receptive turned from the positive. Polarity misdirected the flow and waned chaotic. Severed in consciousness from the one, the way was lost. So the way was lost. And this comes from the lost teachings of the children of the law of one from Atlantis. Okay. And then the separate self sort of like was crowned itself and developed, you know? And the separate self only has life in separation. Separation is an illusion that the separate self works to maintain. The monkey mind serves to keep away the stillness that reveals the light of truth and oneness. The separate self believes and behaves in ways that are not harmonious in the flow of the one. Such disharmony causes suffering, both for the separate self and others. And I wonder why we cling so much to that. I've asked myself that question now that I've awakened to that, which actually defines who I am in spirit. And then I ask myself, I allow so much suffering to self and others. And I realized I contributed because I had forgotten my true essence.
Yeah.
The selfish separate self is a creature of our own design. And once you realize that you actually created that, you realize nobody else to blame.
Yeah.
You've actually contributed.
Yeah.
You're part of it, part of the game. It disdains love. And I said we are an embodiment of love. It shines the light. And I said we are beings of light. It fears the truth. And I said we are an incarnation of truth. The selfish separate self lives against the one. It lives a lie. It hides. It hides. It wears a mask to self and to others. It survives only in illusion. It lives only to serve itself and its masters, the darkness and the lords of darkness. It relishes ignorance with its self-centered gaze. It is blind. The selfish separate self is insane. And unfortunately, it's not even aware that it's insane. It thinks it's smart and wise and full of wisdom. And arrogant on top of that. Terrified of death, because what it only knows is why everything revolves around it. So anything that destabilizes its comfort zone, it poses a threat. So it's very manipulative. And as much as it's terrified of death, yet it often accelerates its demise. It wants to avoid suffering, but in the midst of wanting to avoid suffering, it creates that suffering. It wants to fulfill its every desire. You spoke about the need. I've always been, should I say, reprimanded every time now and again when I'm in dialogue in spirit, and then I'll say, I need this and that and that. And I'll hear a voice inside me. It will say, is it a need or a want? And I'll pause. And it was a need. It's a need. And then they say, and then a voice will say to me, we don't cater for needs. We cater for wants. It wants to fulfill its every desire, and yet it often prevents their attainment. It suffocates itself with its own blind taking and destroy its own source of life. The selfish separate self controls the mind. The limited mind. I'm not talking about the mind which is connected with the universal mind, which emanates from the universal mind. It controls the mind, that limited mind.
Mm-hmm.
And then it thinks it can see far. Meanwhile, it's short-sighted. It has a myopic view. Mm-hmm. And it always twists the truth.
Well, everyone, we've covered a lot of subjects here. So let's just notice, giving us a lot of thought to not have to think about. What you want to do is just allow it to land and allow yourself to absorb what you will absorb. There's no thinking here. This is thinking that comes from out of heart. All right? That heart-centered awareness is essence, takes it in. So notice that. It's like water, like the sun, into the sense of essence that you are, that we each are. And this feeds it, this clarity, and whatever your relation to the source, we just appreciate that something can happen in this moment on an energetic place, and we can all be different for it. So, Mmatheo, I want to thank you, sweetie. We're at our time here. And is there anything you want to wrap really quickly with, or are we at a good place, do you think?
There's nothing to learn. We just have to remember who we are. We have to remember that.
Remember who we are. All right, everybody, we've got our direction.
Who we are and allow it to be. There's nothing to learn. We just have to remember our state of oneness, our state of Ubuntu. Yes.
You too. So we'll thank our African mother from the bottom of our hearts and the center of our beings, and just allow this to radiate out into the world today for you, always. And thank you, Mmatheo.
Thank you for the communion.
Yes, it's been quite lovely. All righty. Talk to you again soon. All right. Mm-hmm. Bye-bye. Our suggested reading includes references for both our 2 episodes about Ubuntu. The Children of One and the Lost Teachings of Atlantis by John Peniel, which is available on Amazon. We also suggest Animal Farm by George Orwell, which is a wonderful satire on any human society. And in Mmatheo's own book, Odyssey of a Healer, she writes in more detail about the androgynous nature of the Great Spirit and the ancient humanoids that were androgynous before the engineered split. And a quote here: "The blessed ones, as mediators between the spiritual and physical realm, are often entrusted with the spiritual mandate to be the gatekeepers of the dimensional portals. This is a high calling bestowed on the individual prior to incarnation that ensures continuity between the deities and nature spirits that dwell in the delicate soul being or consciousness of Mother Earth. The individual transmits a higher vibration as an androgynous being in comparison with an ordinary person. The ancient humanoids were androgynous before the engineered gender split. The androgynous beings are powerful carriers of the spirit because of the union between the masculine and feminine energies in the bodies. The real gender is not antinomic. Primarily, it is a determinant of who contributes which seed for the continuity of life in the physical realm. The tribal elders, guardians of ancient knowledge, have always advocated that a male in the physical can vibrate a feminine energy while the female vibrates the masculine energy. This is because the spirit inhabiting either the male or female body is in itself androgynous. It has both the masculine and feminine energies in perfect balance. Other great minds have thought about one mind. There is one mind common to all individual men, universal mind, the Oversoul, that is unity. Within each every man's particular being is contained and made one with all other. Within man is the soul of the whole, the eternal one. Ralph Waldo Emerson. When we view ourselves in space and time, our consciousnesses are obviously the separate individuals of a particle picture. But when we pass beyond space and time, they may perhaps form ingredients of a single continuous stream of life. As it is with light and electricity, so it may be with life. The phenomena may be individuals carrying on separate existences in time and space, while in the deeper reality, beyond time and space, we may all be members of one body. Sir James Jeans, astrophysicist. And this one. And here is someone you would do well to find out more about. Vusama Zulu Credo Mutwa, and this is from his book, Ndaba, My Children. The most ultimate God, who is the God of the gods of the gods, is everything in everything. Each tree, each blade of grass, and each stone that you see out there, and each one of the things that live, be they men or beasts, are all parts of God, just as each one of the hairs on your head and each flea in your hair and each drop of your blood is part of you. The sun is part of God, the moon is part of God, and each one of these stars is but an infinitesimal part of ultimate God, who will be, yet shall never be, because there never was a time when God was not, and there never is a time when God can never be. He's got a lot of wonderful information, and we want to thank Mmatheo for bringing him to our attention. Being willing to see in the mirror is available on my website blog page at www.janetandbeyond.com and on my YouTube channel, Journeys into Enlightenment with Janet Barrett. Tom's meditation this time is Enlightening the Shadow from his extensive archive and interlude, an internet retreat.
Enlightening the Shadow. A quote by Carl Jung. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The latter procedure, however, is disagreeable, and therefore not popular. We are not just what we think we are. We are also what we think we are not. Each of us forms a sense of our personality based on our capabilities and virtues. We also define ourselves by the characteristics that we reject. If Dad or Mom seems rageful and dangerous, we may grow up rejecting awareness of our own anger. We might assess ourselves as being incapable of acting the way our unpleasant role model did. We tuck away our own angry feelings away from consciousness. We go through life claiming not to be an angry person, but quite possibly disturbed by those who are. Since anger is a legitimate expression of emotion in some circumstances, we may become less flexible, less adaptable in denying it to ourselves. All sorts of qualities of self can get put away in that part of personality psychoanalyst Carl Jung called the shadow. We may put away our capacities for lust, greed, laziness, violence, ambition, or vulnerability. We might also hide away talents that don't fit with who we think we should be, so they lie dormant. Each of us creates our own shadow based on our experience and culture. Hidden from awareness, we're protected from those characteristics in ourselves that would be too painful to look at. Being out of awareness, though, doesn't mean they don't have power in our lives. Where we feel shame, weakness, or inadequacy, we're likely perceiving the effects of the shadow. When we overreact negatively to certain qualities in another person, we're likely driven by the power of the shadow. we least like in others what we've rejected in ourselves. Because it's unconscious, we can't see the shadow directly. It's been formed to hide its contents from us. We can learn about our shadow indirectly. It shows itself in dreams or slips of the tongue or in exaggerated feelings about others. It may become evident in the negative feedback from others that tells us what we'd rather not know about ourselves. When we feel shame or humiliation, we may have been acting from our shadow self. When our anger at other people's faults seems out of proportion, it may be our own weakness that we prefer not to face that generates the heat. Barbara Hanna, a psychotherapist, analyst, and teacher at the C.G. Jung Institute, describes using active imagination to reveal the personal shadow. The process could go something like this. Sit down in a quiet place where you won't be disturbed. Concentrate on seeing or hearing whatever comes up from the unconscious. Work at keeping the images that arise from immediately sinking back into the unconscious. Give them your full attention. Be active in this process. You are not passively watching images go by like you would in a movie. Keep your attention on the first image that presents itself. Hold on to it until it explains itself. What can it tell you about the unconscious? What does it want to know from you? Hannah states, there's one very important rule that should always be retained in every technique of active imagination. In the places where we enter it ourselves, we must give our full conscious attention to what we say or do just as much or even more than we would in an important outer situation. This will prevent it from remaining passive fantasy. But when we've done or said all that we want, we should be able to make our minds a blank so that we can hear or see what the unconscious wants to say or do. Release any negative feelings that the images might stimulate. Be friendly and kind toward them. Acknowledge that they have a right to be in your mind. Perhaps have a dialogue with the mental image. Ask it about itself. Find out what it knows, especially what it knows about you. Invite the image to express itself in some way. Possibly this image is nonverbal. Could it express itself through movement or dance? Once you've come to terms with the image, let it go and see what else comes up. Images from the unconscious can quickly slide back into the darkness, so draw, paint, or write down what you saw. This will help you fix the image in your conscious mind. What you want to do is widen the scope of consciousness. Find yourself where you didn't know you were. Bring what was hidden to light. This can be powerful emotional work. Be careful with yourself. Be compassionate toward yourself. Watch out for your mind's efforts to ignore, distort, or rationalize away what you might not want to see. Perhaps affirm this. May I carry my light to the darkness. May I have courage to see what I've hidden. May I be open to hearing the unthinkable. May I remember to be kind. May I grant mercy that I might receive mercy. May compassion guide me. May wisdom protect me.
You can connect with Mmatheo courtesy of her website www.mmatheomotsisi.com and her email address matteo@worldonline.co.za. Correct spellings will be MMATHEOMOTSISI.com, and that email address is MMATHEO@WORLDONLINE.co.za. Her book, Odyssey of a Healer, is available at Amazon. Thank you for joining me here at Journeys to Enlightenment with Janet. A new episode is released every 2 weeks. Any questions or thoughts or guests you'd like to suggest, you can email me directly at janetandbeyondpodcast@outlook.com. For more information about all the elements that make up each episode, they are on my podcast page at my website, www.janetandbeyond.com. While there, you will also find information about my other podcast show, Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet, and all about my work with clients. You can sign up to receive my regular weekly blog, Life in the Beyond, Journeys into Enlightenment. If you're looking for other regular opportunities to sit in heart-centered awareness with myself and others, you can join us in my Fuzzy Photons playground groups I offer on Wednesdays. Live interactive space via Zoom video conferencing. You can follow each episode of this podcast series on my YouTube channel, Journeys into Enlightenment with Janet Barrett. Till the next time, notice what feels different right in this moment. It is real, and it can last a lifetime.